Well, hey there, Diet Disruptors. Carrie here. And we have a pretty touchy topic to talk about today because, I actually did a podcast recently. It was a few weeks ago, and we talked about eating healthy. And so many people will say to me, I've just decided I'm going to eat really clean. I'm going to eat really healthy. And then they'll say it's like not working. And we talked a lot about that in that podcast. It was really around the concept of blood sugar stabilization and things like that. But there's this tricky, oh gosh, how do I say this? Like this tricky world that I'm navigating as a nutritionist, as a behavior specialist, that I think we have to name. We haven't really dug into this at all. And to be very honest with you, I think it's like this under the rug topic that is we have to bring up, and we have to figure out how to navigate. And the topic is around the concept of eating healthy, because with anything, it's like this pendulum that swings. And especially around social media, we can get ourselves so stuck in one thing and realize it's not one thing or the other. So, we have this major issue in our country right now, and really around the world. But within our country, we have such a pandemic of another kind around obesity and metabolic health. And metabolic health being high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, even stroke and cancer. I mean, metabolic disease is killing 9 out of 10 people in their 60s and 70s right now. And it's completely preventable. And that's what's so amazing about it. It's not just a side effect of getting older. It's actually what we're doing to ourselves. And I mean, I talk about this all the time. And so often the obesity factor here as a metabolic disease is such that people then believe we have to lose weight. And the concept of losing weight gets completely screwed up because we only do what we know how to do. And doctors only know how to do the dieting thing too, really. I've been doing this for so long. I've trained so many people, including doctors, and I realize how little is out there about what we need to really be doing to be able to support our metabolic health. And part of it is because, I mean, any nutritional claim, like whether, you see studies on whether eating 15 almonds a day is going to save your life, or that, eating kale every day is going to make a massive difference. All studies are all flawed in nutrition, every single cotton pick and one of them. And the bottom line is, with the introduction of processed foods back in the 50s, we've gotten more and more unhealthy and more obese. Our lifespan is, it's interesting because our lifespan is one measure, but it's like really our health span is getting lower and lower and lower. We aren't, I always say it's a math equation. We're not functioning as active people. And it's crazy because I went to Colorado recently. My daughter is looking at Colorado, University of Colorado Boulder, and I made a note of how many people I saw that were not obese, older people that were riding bikes and hiking. And it's just like amazing how that culture in Colorado is healthier. But I want to unpack what this word healthy really means, because I'm afraid of the word now. I'm just going to say it. I'm afraid of the word healthy. Healthy is kind of turned into the new skinny, right? We know that in so many ways, with body positivity and supporting people of all body sizes, also really trying to get off the dieting roller coaster, which we hear so many women trying to do. They'll often say, listen, I don't even care about the weight. I just want to be healthy. And then I wonder what that means because we're getting ourselves into a place where does healthy really mean skinny? Are we just are we just putting that word on what we really mean? And secondly, as much as the weight loss, the diet industry, our culture has us believing that our value is in what we weigh and how we're actively working to reframe that. I also always say, like, I want all of us to be the way Dr. Mark Hyman always says, dying younger later. We want to be the healthiest version of ourselves. And with the introduction of pre-processed or processed foods in the 50s, we've become unhealthier and unhealthier. And what it has turned into is an actual kind of new problem called orthorexia. And orthorexia is this kind of unhealthy obsession with being healthy. Disordered eating is sort of my thing. I had an eating disorder, and now most of the women that we work with have disordered eating. But we often attribute it to dieting, an obsession with the scale, an obsession with weight, all of those things. But as we have turned our culture into this healthy culture, which in so many ways is great, but it's just caused kind of a whole nother problem. We've actually become unhealthy. So, a form of disordered eating is when we over focus trying to get extra healthy and really optimize our nutrition. So it's so interesting to think about because we can think about unhealthy, right? Unhealthy infections, metabolic disease, chronic diseases, inflammation, weight gain. I always say is a symptom of health and hormones. But it's almost like people with orthorexia actually have this, sometimes it's called healthyism, and they're obsessed with healthiness, goodness, purity, the cleanliness of food. It's like really going into the concept of clean eating and feel excessively concerned and really anxious about being harmed or getting serious health problems if they don't strictly follow this way of eating. And so we need to call it out because when, the Whole30, for example, I'm not saying that that brings that out, but Whole30 is a month of eating just really clean, whole, unprocessed food. And in theory, I have no issue with that. We do that with our own clients a lot. We don't do Whole30, but um, help them to understand why we want to pull back on processed food as much as we can. But it's always about our why. I did a podcast recently on our motives. It's why. And once we let that pendulum swing and it becomes so obsessive, it becomes disordered eating. And very often our why also is around feeling unhappy in our bodies, overly focused on ourselves, thinking about what we look like and our values in that and being hypersensitive to that. It could still stem from that same dieting PTSD, but we're just really focused on the external performance standards and approval, never feeling quite good enough and feeling like what you've learned and all of the research that you've done in health and nutrition and all of those things has actually caused you to have this obsession with being overly healthy. And it's as much of a problem as the chronic dieter. Very often, this healthy person is also hyper focused on calories and things like that. And we do have to be aware of that. But when we want to get to a place of true health, it's got to mean true balance. And I think it's so important to recognize that clean eating, if that becomes an obsession, you've now replaced the dieting mindset with another kind of dieting mindset. The three questions that we ask all the time are around, and I think that this is a perfect litmus test for anything. If you are so focused on not eating anything processed, not eating anything that wouldn't serve your body, then you're living very often a life of deprivation. Where does the soul fill and stuff come in? Because food is such a part of our lives. And let me tell you this, a healthy body can handle some of that stuff. It can. And if it's one thing, it's always around the why, right? Because it's one thing if we are really focused on it for the right reasons. And it's another thing when we're focusing on it that it takes over our lives. So the three questions, right? One, is what you're doing based in science designed for your body to thrive? Well, eating really clean, whole, unprocessed foods all the time, absolutely. Could be based in science. It could be designed for your body to thrive as long as you're not putting yourself at this big deficit, that you're balancing your blood sugar. Absolutely. Two, would you let your kids do this? Would you let your kids eat real clean and quote unquote healthy? Yeah, right? Are they going to want to all the time? Do you feel like you want to be able to give them sometimes something that's going to serve their soul or be a treat? If the answer is yes, then you deserve that as well. And two, can we do this for the rest of our lives? If you're doing something that causes obsession, then you can't do that forever, even if you think you can do that forever. It's really got to be around why we're doing this. And if there's a big fear around eating anything unclean because you are worried about what your physical body will end up looking like, that's no different than dieting. And so I want to call out this concept because I think it's like under the rug. And I think we talk about this concept of clean eating in a way that actually could be just replacing one diet with another concept that's still around the dieting focus. Because we want to like really think about this balance. What's the balance between like being sane, sensible, like being balanced, and then being obsessive or it being a disorder? And I think that's what makes it hard. Anytime we overly obsessed with something or it becomes kind of how much it impacts your physical health or your mental health, then there's not a balance there. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a checklist right now to see if you have orthorexic tendencies. Okay. So I want you to be thinking about this and then just allow this to ruminate with you. Okay. So, when eating, do you pay attention to the calories of food? And I know that that can be healthy or unhealthy, but if you're, I mean, I literally at this point in my life, I have no idea what calories are in any food. And that is the most freeing thing. And it's possible. I promise you. But are you overly paying attention to calories of food? When you go into a food shop, do you feel confused? Do you feel overwhelmed? Like, where is that? Um, Does food make you feel guilty if you are even tempted to have something that's not clean or unprocessed, right? Are you when you if we asked you why you are eating clean, what could you say about that? And is it a balanced reaction, right? Do you have food worry or food thoughts that take over some hours a day? And are you like, what is your mindset around food that isn't quote unquote healthy? Now, the reason why this is such a hard conversation is because I don't even like the way a lot of like processed food makes me feel. So I simply don't want it. So the way that I approach dinner in a restaurant might look very similar to way somebody with orthorexia it orders at a restaurant. The difference is the why behind it. if I feel better and this food looks good to me and I want it, and I know it's going to serve my body and I really want to serve my body, that's different than being obsessed with being unable to, or feeling like I'm unable to have anything that is quote unquote unhealthy. It's really around the fact that these behaviors could look similar. And this is why people don't notice it, because being healthy is one thing, but being obsessed with being healthy and being fearful of certain types of food and being obsessed with why, coming from ego versus heart, well, that's a whole nother story. And that's a dieting mentality. And that has to do with disordered eating. That is a big part of what we do at Disruptive Nutrition, and why I'm so focused on that in my podcast and when we work with clients. So, what do we do about this? How do we even know if this is where we are? Well, those questions that I asked you, I think starts to trigger some pieces of that. But the very first thing that we have to do is start to tap into our thinking and our why, and what are we putting in front of ourselves in our social media feed. If you look at that algorithm tells a lot about what you're thinking, because we click on certain things, and the technology today, it's like it knows us. In fact, we were just talking about something the other day. What were we talking about? Window flower boxes. I was talking about flower boxes, and my husband said, "Did you search flower boxes?" And I'm like, "No, why?" He says, "I just got flower boxes up on my feed on Facebook." Crazy, right? But your feed is a bit of a representation of what's going on in your heart and in your mind. So that's like good indication for you to start with. And if it's like completely around healthy, 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 and you've got a mindset and a fear around anything that is quote unquote unhealthy, then that's just swinging that pendulum to a whole nother side. And I'm very excited about this. I do this a few times a year where we're bringing we do this a few different ways, but I'm doing a 1 hour challenge on May 14th, where I'm going to spend May 14th for an hour with you to challenge you to learn and to think differently. And so if you are interested in that, I want you to go and sign up for that, because we'll drop a link for you. It will be on our website everywhere. Go follow us on Instagram, look for it, because that 1 hour challenge is going to challenge your thinking and really allow you to start asking yourself, what do I need to do? Why do I need to do it? And how do I need to start getting my brain trained so that I swing that pendulum over to the other side? So I'm hoping that this gave you a little bit of insight, a little bit of thought around a topic that is hard and it is easy to disguise. We can easily disguise disordered eating under the realm of I'm eating healthy. But you know your heart, you know where you are, you know if it's being obsessive, and you know if that pendulum is swinging too far on one side. And if so, I want you to stay plugged in with us, and I want you to sign up for our 1 hour challenge. I'm going to be there, and I hope you are too. Okay. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, what your reflections are. I'm going to tap more into this year, but this is just the introduction. All right, guys. Thanks.